Welcome to Intel Studios Veterans Matter broadcast, the first live stream broadcast strictly for veterans and active duty military in the tri-state New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania areas. Veterans Matter is produced by Al Zetmeyer and Jerry Fournier and is an Intel Studios production. And now, live from our studio in Northfield, New Jersey, your host, Veterans Advocate Mike Merlino. Good afternoon, and we welcome all of our audience, and it is our hope that today's broadcast will assist or enlighten you, and at the very least, let you know that there is help for you if needed. If you want friends to participate in our broadcast, they need to go to our website, veteransmatternj.com. That's veteransmatternj altogether.com. Click on the Our Show circle, then click on subscribe. You can also go directly to YouTube, hit the search button, type in Intel Studios live stream, and then scroll down the options until you see Veterans Matter. Our phone lines are available throughout the broadcast. I'll let our audience know when we begin taking calls. And please remember that the calls are answered in the order they appear, so please be patient. And that phone line is 609-798-4475. That's 609-798-4475. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce a couple of great Americans that haven't been on our show before, but it's obvious from the number of years that they've served their country and their community that they love their country. I want to first introduce a 31-year United States Air Force veteran, a very good friend of mine, Bill Blake. Bill, welcome to Veterans Matter Radio Show.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Our second guest spent quite a few years in the United States Army, retired as a command sergeant major, and he also retired from the New Jersey State Police. I want to welcome to our studio Pentti Forsman. Welcome, Pentti.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here.
Great to have you guys, and I would just like to say that first off, welcome home, and thank you for your service. Bill, one of the things I like to do when we get started here is I want to take you back probably over 31 years ago when you were getting out of high school. Was the military on your mind then, or did you have an idea of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a good starter there. So, I was actually going to go in the Army when I was 17 years old, and my father said, "You're not going in yet." And he said to me, he goes, if that's what you want to do. Now, granted, I have an older brother. He's a retired Major General, and he was at the Citadel at the time. So, my dad said, "You're not going to do that. You need to. You're going to go to the Citadel or wherever you want to go." So I actually could have went to Lehigh to wrestle. I could have went to Duke and played football, or I had the Citadel for track and field, and I threw the javelin. So I chose the Citadel. I didn't get in right away. They had me all slotted, but they didn't have the scholarship and all that stuff set up, the money and so forth. So I had to wait a year. And then in that time, I actually worked for a friend of mine in a printing company, and I learned how to do print work, 3D, 3-color and all that. But it taught me a valuable lesson. I said, and no disrespect to those people because they work hard. I said, this is not what I want to do. I definitely want to go. So that's when my whole Citadel career started. But I wasn't one of these guys that watched World War II movies or anything. That was my brother that did all that. I just figured if I was going to go anywhere, I'd rather go there because I eventually wanted to, pursue some type of military career.
Now, the Citadel, of course, is a military academy.
Correct.
So when you graduated there, what would you rank?
So that was so you have your academies, your Naval Academy, West Point, you have your Coast Guard Academy, and you have your Air Force Academy. The Citadel was a state military college, so guys, there's a percentage that they graduated back then. It was all guys back then, all male. You graduated, you could either go into the military or you could pursue a civilian career. So I had learned as my parents moved to New Jersey while I was at the Citadel. The next door neighbor was a guy named gentleman named Colonel Wesley Hannon. He was the former commander at the 177. It was that moment that I met him, my next door neighbor, that he introduced me to everybody to the Guard, and I elected to go into the Guard, and then things pursued after that with the pilot training and all that.
You know, you mentioned your dad, and your dad knows it. He knew a thing or two about the military, correct?
Yeah. So my father was, he was in the about 4 or 5 years he served, and he was a B-47 and a B-52 mechanic. He might even have been a crew chief, I think. And he was out of Plattsburgh, New York, and he was doing all these, what they call temporary duties, TDYs. He either went to Thule, Greenland, or he went over to Brize Norton in the UK. That's where he met my mom. So he met my mom, they got married, and they came back over here, and then the rest is history. And then obviously I'm going to take this time to thank you, because you and all of your guys showed up for my father's funeral a few years ago, and that meant a lot to a lot of people. So thank you again for that.
Yeah, and I was going to mention that we, the American Legion Riders out of Post 352, were honored to stand the flag line and do the escort. So, yeah, it was a great day, and you're quite welcome. I'm going to get back, Bill. I'm going to go over to Pentti. Pentti, I'm going to take you back to when you were in school, and what was it that made your decision to go into the military?
I did like the military movies as a teenager. I didn't know anybody that was actually in the military, and it kind of intrigued me, and it was a little bit of the unknown. And I wanted to travel and go on to the GI Bill, which at the time was a great way to fund college afterwards, after you served. So it was something I wanted to do, and probably in my junior year, I decided that's what I was going to pursue. So after I graduated, June of '85, I went in September. I took a couple months off to train and get ready and enjoy my summer before I met up with Uncle Sam at Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
That's where you did your basic?
I did my basic and AIT there, once OSET training, yes.
Wow. So, you know, you guys both served a number of years. Pentti, you were 1985 to 2008. And Bill, you are at 31 years. What year did you retire?
So I retired in 2018, and that's another unique story, because I actually went to pilot training and did all that, and then I actually went on what they call IRR in Individual Ready Reserve in 2003. Was out for about 10 years, and then I went back in again, and then I finished out, and that's what qualified me for my 31 years and my full retirement.
Now, Bill, I always ask the guy, you know, this is the first time we've actually had someone who's flown and been in the Air Force. We've had a lot of guys that were in the Air Guard, guys like Mike Francis, Stan Mitchell, both were Master Sergeant.
Chief Master Sergeant
Right.
Mike Francis and Chief Master Sergeant Dan Mitchell, both very accomplished senior enlisted airmen.
Now, you're a big guy, Bill. You know, wasn't there some kind of a cutoff for pilots?
So back when I went, I went to pilot training in Reese Air Force Base in Texas. I wasn't this heavy. I was about maybe 210, somewhere around there. And then a lot of the years was that. And then when I went and transferred over to the KC-135, I always wanted to be in the gym. And then at that point in time, I was up in ranks, so they really weren't checking so much. Unless you were just really overweight. And then I was only around maybe 235 or 240. And then when I actually deployed to Afghanistan, there was not much to do but fly, sleep, eat, and train. And then there I got up to about 250, 260. And then my last deployment when I was over in Germany, I was up to about 275. Now I sit around 260. So there is a height and a weight requirement. And so, and I always adhere to that pretty much. But, you know, it's not as bad as you think getting into the cockpit. It's not that bad.
You know, did you ever get the opportunity to fly the, the, what are they?
F-16?
Yeah, the F-15s or.
F-16. Yeah, so I started out in pilot training. You fly the T-37. That's your side-by-side, subsonic, and you learn all your acrobatic, and then all your instruments and all the basics that you need to fly. And then you upgrade to the T-38, which is now either pilot in the front, student in the back, or student in the front, pilot in the back, and then you do the same type of thing. But then you start flying more formation. You fly formation in the 37, but you also fly formation. That's supersonic. You do your little 1 or 2 supersonic rides, and then I qualified to fly the fighter, so I went on and went to F-16 training and so forth. Had some time in that aircraft, and that was just an amazing aircraft. What it could do is just basically it was like driving a Ferrari all the time. So that was really amazing. And then when I transferred over to the tanker, it was almost like a whole different thing, crew concept and all that, and I enjoyed that. So I was pretty fortunate to have a cross section of aircraft having flown them.
And you actually flew 50 combat missions in Afghanistan, correct?
Yep, and that was in the tanker. That was in Operation Enduring Freedom. We deployed in 2001, or 2002 rather. And it was actually a top secret base. Now they can say what it was. It was Oman was a base that we worked out of, and so we flew a lot of missions there when in the early stages of it.
Now, Bill, in recognition of your service in the Air Force, we'd like to play this for you. Bill, that was for you. And,
I was appreciated. Thank you.
really honored to have you here and to hear your story. You know, Pentti, I want to take you back. You enlisted in the Army, and you served quite a few years, actually 23 years in the military. But you also served your community as a New Jersey State Police. I'll ask you a couple questions. Like, you're in the hot seat here, but with all the things that have happened around the country in the last few years, especially in the middle of COVID, where law enforcement has really taken a beating the last few years. Now, when did you actually retire from?
I retired from the state police in 2016, before the COVID hit.
Before.
Yes,
Yeah.
and before the political winds shifted a little bit, the sentiment anti-law enforcement. But with that being said, the people that are out there on the front lines will do what they have to do, and they'll use the old term "soldier on," and make sure that they protect to the best of their ability. It's up to the prosecutors and everybody else to uphold their end of the bargain.
In all the years that you were in the state police, and then you had to go and do military duty, did you ever have a hard time with your commanding officers in the state police?
Absolutely not. They supported it 100%. This is an interesting tidbit. The average person doesn't know this. General Storeman Norman Schwarzkopf, his father was our first superintendent of the state police, and it was founded in 1921. His father was badge number 1, and he founded it with all the individuals that came back from World War I, a lot of the commanders that he had served from West Point, and he handpicked a lot of our beginning first couple hundred troopers. And at our 75th anniversary, he came up to speak, and I was in formation while he spoke, and he called it the outfit, or his father called it the outfit. And when he said he was a little boy driving down, whether it was on a turnpike or whatever highway that they were on, his father would say, there's my guys, or there's the outfit, is well represented. So he remembered that, and the state police was part of his bonding as a father-son relationship as he grew up. So, no, they supported it 100%, and what I learned in basic training and from the Army really helped me in the academy, because a lot of the same commands were used. I was very used to a lot of what formations were, and so it really set me up and gave me a good base to use later on. After September 11th of '01, it was very hard to be a trooper and a reservist or National Guards person. I served with numerous ones throughout the state and throughout the country, and there was no 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks during the summer. All bets were off. There were active duty tours all over the country, all over the world to help support, and became a little challenging after this. Actually, one day I got up and had worked so much, I actually started to put the wrong uniform on. Getting up at dark 30, I started to put on my state police uniform, but it was a Saturday, so I had to put on my military uniform to report for duty wherever I was assigned at the time.
Amazing. I have such admiration for those who served our country and served our community in law enforcement, the first responders. And I would ask you, Pentti, where were you on September 11th?
I was actually on a plane the day before September 10th. I was coming back from the Midwest. I actually was in Nebraska, and I flew from, I believe it was Lincoln or Omaha, via Minneapolis to Philadelphia. And the day of September 11th, I was actually supposed to be off from work. And believe it or not, it was a late night that night when I got in, and I was still at home, but I think I was laying in bed, and Bill called me. And he said, turn on the news. I think I had a sports channel on. So I turned on the news, and I saw one of the, towers, on fire. And he goes, this isn't good. I said, no, it's not good. And then the other plane hit, and my phone rang a little while after, and it was a duty calling for the state. And they said, we need you to report immediately. And, so I remember that day like it was yesterday.
Now, were you called up immediately?
I wasn't called up for the military. I was called in for the state police. We did a mandatory recall that everybody was called back to help out. They didn't know if there was other attacks pending, or to support New York. A lot of our troopers deployed up north because they shut down all the roadways, the bridges and tunnels into Manhattan. So they needed a lot of extra manpower that day and days thereafter with that. So.
Pentti, in honor of your service in the Army, we would like to play this. Maybe. And welcome back to Veterans Matter Radio Show with our guest, Bill Blake, Pentti Forsman. Yeah, Bill, I want to take you back to that day also. I believe were you active duty on September 11th?
No, actually, I was actually with the Guard, but I had a civilian job. I was actually was that, a drug rep? No, I was later on. So I have a kind of a dual course career with pharmaceuticals and medical, and so the company I was working with, we did all the when drugs basically want to put their drugs on the market, they would come through us, and we would do all the strategy and all the clinical studies and all that. So that's what I was doing. So that particular morning, I had dropped off Sophia. She's 21 now. She was born in 2000. Was born in November, and I dropped her off for somewhere. I was doing something. I came out, I came back, and I looked on the TV, and I see it was on the Today Show or something like that. Tower, one of the towers was burning, one or two or whatever they call it, and it was clear in a million. People were like, "What's going on here? This plane hit," and I go, "This is weird." And then about 21, 22 minutes later, the other one comes in on the screen of TV and collides with the other tower. About an hour after that, I get a call, and they said, you're being activated right now." And I raced up to McGuire. I called Penn and said, "I got to go to McGuire," and I'm doing like 100 miles an hour to get to McGuire. And one of his buds in the Staples Gun, Brady Gibbons, pulls me over, and I go, "Dude, I gotta go," and he goes, "Take off," So I got up there, and then we were activated. So they put all these trailers together, and we were on alert. We would fly missions at night over certain areas of interest that were high valued areas, your Washington. So we would fly through the night into the days and everything else, and then eventually we were deployed over to Oman, which is south of Afghanistan. So that morning I couldn't believe it. It's like a great fall day, and you're actually the tower's on fire, and then the other. So it's kind of crazy.
Crazy time for our country, and at that time, Al and I, we had spent from about middle 80s to 2007. We were doing sideline photography, locker room interviews for the FCA and Sharing the Victory magazine and Sports Spectrum, and of course idolized these sports figures. And I was at work when the towers were hit. My wife had called me after the first one. I couldn't believe that it was an airliner that hit it. I thought, okay, small plane, but all of a sudden she's like, "Oh my God, Mike, a second one." I said, "I'll be home." I knew that we were under attack at that moment, and it changed my whole perspective. And I've said it many times on this show, that I knew at that moment that our heroes weren't the guys between the white lines. And wasn't many years after that, a few years, that I started advocating for our veterans. Got involved with Rolling Thunder, then with the American Legion Riders, started a veterans radio show way back with Commander Bill Butler, right around 2009, 2010. Back in those days, there was very little here in South Jersey for our veterans. The clinic was located over in the Vetner Middle School. It wasn't a real nice facility.
Yeah.
And our more World War II veterans were still alive back then, and to watch them have to go on a bus to Wilmington or to Philly, given a bottle because there wasn't toilet facilities. To me, there was just no dignity in it.
So there's this is a very interesting fact. It's a biblical fact. So anybody that knows me knows that I'm a saved Christian. But there's a Rabbi, Jonathan Cain. He's out of Jersey City, and he's a Messianic Jew. Jonathan Cain wrote a book called The Harbinger, and it's all based on the Isaiah 9:10 prophecy. So, I'll ask you this question. Where do you think the Declaration of Independence, the first congressional meeting with George Washington, and where do you think that took place?
Well, the normal thing to say would be Philadelphia, but
I'll tell you, it was at Ground Zero in New York City. And it was in a church that was right in that sector that all the World Trade Center surrounded it. So, in so many words, if you pulled pulled up the prophecy, and by the way, the Bible, a quarter of the Bible is Bible prophecy, but yet nobody reads it. But it's the most important thing. It's God's reward to us for why we live the way we live and how we conduct ourselves every day in accordance to the Ten Commandments and the apostles and so forth. So anyway, Ground Zero was there. That's where George Washington raised up the country and said, this is your country. So in God we trust. This is God's country. All these years later, you go to the World Trade Centers being bombed. So back then, it was back when the Jews were, so God would create this hedge of protection around the Jews. And then when they decided they didn't want to follow God's rule anymore, he would just simply lift the hedge of protection. They would get invaded, whether it was Nebuchadnezzar, whether it was the Assyrians, whatever. So the Assyrians were the ones that actually took over the Jews, and they put them under torture and slavery and all sorts of stuff. Those terrorists, and the Isaiah 9:10 prophecy says, in so many words, it says, we will, after they rebuilt, they said, we will replace these bricks with stone. We will, the sycamore tree will be replaced by whatever. So they basically were giving their thumbs, they were giving their middle finger to the Lord. So he says, okay, so all these years later, you got the World Trade Centers. And this was prophesied in the Isaiah 9:10 prophecy. The Assyrians, every one of those terrorists that flew those jets were of Assyrian descent. Dates back to it. I already told you that Ground Zero was at the site. The only building that withstood all that impact and the ground tremors was a church, and it was a sycamore tree that absorbed all the shock and saved the church. And then anybody who said that prophecy or said those words thereafter, they were kind of cursed. So you had Tom Daschle, you had Barack Obama, and you had John Stewart, who was the gentleman that he was supposed to be heading for president, and then he unfortunately had his marriage and all that other stuff. So those guys there all suffered. But the crazy thing about it is, it gets better. So all these years later, I go there, and I had a couple meetings in New York, and I was with one of my executives, and I said, hey, have you seen Ground Zero? And he goes, no. So we went over there real quick, walked in this church, thought it was the church, but it wasn't. And the way the book was, there's usually when you have a prophet, you have a scribe, the prophet's dressed in black and so forth. So I'm walking and I'm telling this guy about the Isaiah 9:10 prophecy. The guy taps me on the shoulder. He's in all black. He goes, the Harbinger? And I said, yeah. He goes, the world has no idea what it's in for. I turned to my guy, turned back, the guy's gone. So it's like, and here you go. Now you're looking at all the aftermath of everything repeating itself in the Bible, all the prophecies. And that was one of them. There's a lot more to it, but basically there's significance that the reason why it happened there and how it happened and when it happened and all that. And obviously in the Jewish religion, everything happens in 7 years or Shemitahs and 50 years Jubilees and all. That's all. Numbers are big with in the Bible, and that's kind of how it happened. But it was just a fact that just to think about it. If you look up Rabbi Jonathan Cain, the book The Harbinger, it tells you everything that happened and how it relates to what happened then during those times. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you would bring up this subject because in the not too distant future, we're expanding our programming. We're going to be doing a kind of a religious program.
Perfect.
We're going to be inviting different pastors to come on and talk about these kind of things. And I think one of the things, I don't know if you guys would agree with me, I think one of the problems today, so many of our men and women are suffering from post-traumatic stress. And I think that the VA does about all can do. But I think we've missed the boat because I think there's a spiritual aspect of healing that we've missed.
Amen.
And I think, well, hopefully we'll be able to do something. I know I've been working with the pastor of my church. I go to Fusion.
Yep.
And
Right. Who's the pastor there?
Brendan Wilson.
Brendan Wilson. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know church is crucial. I know that Pentti and I, what we've seen, and I mean, you got to just interject with his state police, what he's seen there. That has an effect on people. You know, people don't realize that. Now, difference is when you had World War I, World War II, and my personal thought is you had parades, you celebrated the victory, then came Vietnam. Nobody celebrated anything. So these guys were stuck, and 24, 48 hours later, they were in a jungle and then in the streets saying, hey, see ya, plus the protesting. And today, I think that the military is really disrespected in that matter. As a matter of fact, this generation that's coming through right now, I think they're in a total state of confusion. And I think that, you know, having God or God's word in your life in some way, shape, or form definitely helps make the difference. Because if you don't have anything to look towards, then that you add that PTSD to it. I mean, what's the suicide rate now? It's at and that's just the military. But then you look at the suicide with the COVID that hit, the suicide rate just totally took off and increased. So yeah, it's a pretty demonic environment out there.
Yeah, we're trying to do some different things to trying to change the focus of all these men and women. I mean, 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. And way back when that was first being highly publicized, and I was doing a radio show with Bill Butler, I went back and went all the way back into the early 60s and learned that figure hasn't changed since then. It's been 22 veterans a day since the Vietnam War, a couple years into it. And I think we're light on that number because we're not including the single car accidents, some of the overdoses, they don't consider suicides. It's really a shame. I just had a friend of mine, 15-year Air Force veteran. He committed suicide. Just left a wife and 5 kids behind. It's very sad. And I think we need to do more to help. And I don't think that a government bureaucracy is the answer to it. But Pentti, being in law enforcement and also being in the military, overall, do you have any regrets to any of your service?
None whatsoever. No, it was an honor and a privilege to serve, and I liked wearing a uniform, and probably from an early age, and I just did it from when I was 18, and once I got off active duty, I stayed in the reserve, so that 23 years was straight through, and a couple of mobilizations in there in between, but no regrets whatsoever.
And same with your career at the state police.
Yes, no, same. Very rewarding internally, helping somebody. It's sometimes you don't do it for the accolades or the data boy, but internally it means something if you can help somebody. You get to see good and bad in people. You try to reason with some of them. Some can't be reasoned with, but at the end of the day, if you gave your best and tried, it's self-satisfaction.
We're going to play a song, take a short break, and come back and cover a couple of other things.
On On November 8, 1965, the 173rd Airborne Brigade on Operation Hump, War Zone D in Vietnam, were ambushed by over 1,200 BC. 48 American soldiers lost their lives. Severely wounded and risking his own life, Lawrence Joel, a medic, was the first living black man since the Spanish-American War to receive the United States Medal of Honor for saving so many lives in the midst of battle that day. Our friend Niles Harris, retired 25 years United States Army, the guy who gave Big Kenny his top hat, was one of the wounded who lived. This song is his story. Caught in the action of kill or be killed, greater love hath no man than to lay down his life for his brother.
As he left South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do. He was dropped in the jungle where the choppers would rumble with the smell of napalm in the air. Then the sergeant said, "Look up ahead." Like a dark evil cloud, 1,200 came down on him and 29 more. They fought for their lives, but most of them died in the 173rd Airborne. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965, the 8th of November. Now he's 58 and his ponytail's gray, but the battle's still blazing his head. He limps when he walks, but he's strong when he talks about the shrapnel that left in his leg. He puts on a gray suit over his airborne tattoo, and he ties it on one time a year, and remembers the fallen as he orders a tall one and swallows it down with his tears. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965, the 8th of November. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. On the 8th of November, the angels were crying as they carried his brothers away. With the fire raining down and the hell all around, there were few men left standing that day. Saw the eagle fly through a clear blue sky. 1965. South Dakota to fight for the red, white, and blue. He was 19 and green with a new M16, just doing what he had to do.
Welcome back to Veterans Matter Radio Show. That was 8th of November by Big and Rich. Back when we were first starting, I don't know if you guys know, 2013, we produced Vet Rock at Bader Field, Atlantic City, and we actually tried to get Big and Rich to be our keynote music. It was a little bit out of our ballpark there, yeah. But it was a great day we had there, honoring our Vietnam veterans with the welcome home that they never received. Could have been a better day, but it was very meaningful anyway. You know, guys, you've served for so many years in different parts of the world. A lot of people, you know, they think of the military as just being a war machine, you know. And even when we are at war in those countries, they think that all we're doing there is killing people. But there's such a huge humanitarian effort that goes in no matter where we are. And, you know, Pentti, when you look back at your career in different places you served, tell us a little bit about the things that you saw or been a part of, you know, what the Army was doing besides just killing people.
Especially in Germany, we had so many forces there in the 80s, you know, against the Iron Curtain. Anytime that we damaged any property, whether it be a tree in the forest or a vehicle, if somebody hit it with a armored vehicle or a vehicle, the U.S. government was very good to pay for damages that were, you know, done to the, you know, Germans' property, and they were always a lot of interaction between the host country and our forces as well. Ceremonies that were attended by both militaries, a lot of interaction with the community, community cleanup days, different things, open house type events and stuff to, you know, bring people together, break down barriers, and relate to one another. And the U.S. really tried to do the right thing, you know, and interact with whoever or wherever we were at and whatever we were doing. But yeah, it was good to see.
Yeah, Bill, also, you know, even during your time in Afghanistan, there was a lot going on to raise up the people of Afghanistan.
Yeah, so that's a big component of the Air Force that people don't realize. Yeah, there is a lot of bomb dropping and things of that nature, but the Air Mobility Command is huge with all the C-5s, C-17s, whatever. We used to fly a lot of channel missions in the KC-135, and we would load that up with pallets full of supplies and things for all the neighboring countries and, you know, all those things. So, you know, our armed forces aren't necessarily, we're there as a deterrence, but we're also there to preserve and improve upon humanity.
You know, you get some weird texts sometimes. There are people watching the show of all the things they're asking is, who was the guy who narrated the beginning of that song, the 8th of November, for those who are interested, that happened to be a United States Air Force veteran, Chris Christopherson, who narrated that song. Big and Rich sang it. Chris Christopherson did the narrate. It's amazing, you know. You could be sitting here talking about so many things, and I get this text about that. Wow,
That's pretty cool. I mean, a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of Jimmy Stewart was a 2-star general, and he used to be an instructor pilot in World War II. John Denver, was he a door gunner?
I'm
maybe
not sure.
some special forces or something like that. There's a lot of people that a lot of movie stars, celebrities and stuff that actually served and put a lot of time into the military.
Now, Bill, when you were flying combat missions in Afghanistan, uh, were any of those missions at night? I have a
The
question.
majority of them were at night, and then we were at that particular mission was with the KC-135 tanker, so we were flying tracks and we were refueling whether it was A-10s, F-16s, F-15s, no matter what, and then the whole war theater was like a big checkerboard grid, and they would come in and out of their grid and get the area of fueling the fuel and so forth. But we would fly. The majority of our missions were always at night. They were 6, 7, 8 hours long sometimes.
Were any of those missions in the mountainous areas?
Yeah, you would take off out of Oman and you take off to the south and immediately fly north through a corridor. And I don't say it much, but when we were there, they were still figuring out what the Afghanis, what they had as far as anti-aircraft and so forth. So we were always under a threat flying in and out of there. The corridors were relatively safe, but there were times where a threat would pop up, and if you're flying over, you had to do some type of evasive or be prepared to do an evasive maneuver.
So, if there was a platoon, Marines or Army in the mountain, and they're pinned down, they call for air support. You guys go in. I mean,
Yeah, so
it's got to be just
So-
phenomenal effort.
there's another component that was later on in my career before I retired. I was an air liaison officer, and then you have what they call joint JTACs, Joint Terminal Air Controllers. Those guys were like the special ops of the Air Force, if you want to just give it a general term. They were the ones that would embed where nobody knew they were, and they would set up a post or whatever, and they would call those airstrikes in just for that reason, whether they were bombing buildings or whatever with threats, or they were helping preserve to get guys evac'd out and so forth. So, yeah, you're right. A lot of the times the A-10s would come in and they did a lot of work, and that's a whole different type of war that we were fighting. Versus what you could potentially see a war, basically what went on during World War I and World War II. But yeah, there was a lot of those times where we were all quiet on the radio because there were guys pinned down and they were trying to get them in and out of there. And obviously you see Lone Survivor and all those true stories. It's just amazing how all the armed forces, they come together, just all hands on deck just to get these guys out. It was really, really heroic.
When you look at what happened under this president and the way we left Afghanistan, having been there, and how did you feel about the way we exited Afghanistan?
Absolutely disgusting. Just I guess people in general, they're more offended by somebody who puts out mean tweets versus did you execute? His plan was to basically, the way that it was set up, from my knowledge, is you get all the civilians, you get all the people out of there first, then you get your troops out, and then finally you leave and you take all your equipment with you, and anything left behind that could be possibly used against us, that was destroyed. And that didn't take place at all, and for whatever reason, and then when you have 13 people, was it 13 people that died? 13 service people. They were died. It was uncalled for. It was just a disgrace. And that is, in my opinion, is what brought on Putin going into Ukraine, because they saw that weakness and nothing was done. And, and Pentti has knowledge of that too. So, whatever your thoughts are, Pentti, on that.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Pentti?
It was disheartening to watch on television because just about everybody who's lower ranking than in a 2 or 3 star general knew there was a better way to do it, and that wasn't the safest way. And to leave all our equipment in Bagram Air Base there instead of keeping that as a strategic based for future operations, it made absolutely no sense whatsoever. And the money that we spent, and lives that were lost, and the vehicles and all the additional equipment that was just left, it's disheartening.
Yeah, it really is. And I can remember the day that we saw that happening. I started getting texts from I don't know if you know United States Army Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Batchinger. Glenn's a local Mays Landing resident, and he's still in the military. Matter of fact, he's serving in Italy, and recently I've got some texts asking us to try to help. He's right on the border between Italy and Poland, trying to help the Ukrainian refugees, get them situated. So, it never ends for our military in one way or another. But the day that this happened, right before I went on the show, I'm getting these texts from Mike, please reach out to Congressman Van Drew. Please, I spent, 10 years in Afghanistan, and he had his interpreters there, and he knew they were at risk now. And to this day, he hasn't heard whether they've been able to get them out or not. And our congressman did everything he could do, but it was in the hands of the State Department.
Yeah, so many people were just left behind. It was senseless, and they just totally went in reverse. A lot of these decisions have been made out of spite, not logic, spite, and nobody's being held accountable for it, at least not yet. So I think of those 13 service members that lost their life for no reason at all. They served their country, and I mean, just even down to the funeral, just the reception of those of the deceased and the families. There's such disrespect, And I'll just say, President Trump, he would go out of his way 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. He'd be there to see every single one of those deceased come home and with proper honor and all that other stuff. And there's a lot of other great presidents. Reagan. There's a lot of great presidents that had that honor. And unfortunately, we are in just a real bad dark cloud of leadership right now.
Pentti, when being not just military but being law enforcement, these last say, I believe it started under President Obama. The division was caused then. When you look at that as a career law enforcement officer, and you see things, what happened in Missouri, right outside of St. Louis, the Michael Brown, isn't it? The hands up, don't shoot stuff, and Obama sends his own prosecutor out there. And the guy says it didn't happen that way, The police officer is exonerated, but the president wouldn't let those words get out there. It's got to be frustrating for law enforcement.
The media sensationalizes everything. What law enforcement does wrong is we don't get the hand up. We're always behind. We let the media explain their narrative. You have reporters there that are 20-something years old that just got out of communication school. A lot of them really know nothing. There's multiple videos out there that they put them into simulations training, shoot, don't shoot situations, and just about everyone fails absolutely miserably under the gun to make the decisions. But they're the ones that are reporting and with really no base or understanding of deadly force, use of force, and they make the reports, and usually the police with the public information officer, whatever department or organization is, we're always reacting instead of being proactive. They need to get out there right away and have a press conference, and we let the narrative right away, it runs away. They interview somebody on the street that has no idea or has their own agenda, and that becomes, documented that that's exactly what happened, and it takes a lot longer to unfold that. And so there's, a lot of people disrespect, the local law enforcement. You're never going to change everybody, but you just want a fair shake. But what's happened over the last, major incidents, I mean, it's unprecedented. And once again, the police are not always right, but there's a way to do it and to shake it out and through the court system and the legal realm on what was right and what was wrong. But most of the time, the false narrative just takes off, and that's once it's out there, it's very hard to reel it back in.
We don't often have this. What I hate to use the word just talent, but we have a career law enforcement, a career Army veteran, a career United States Air Force veteran, and you look at the direction our country has gone. I like to say, when people are out there complaining about the price of gasoline, I say, 200,000 or now 900,000 Americans are dead just to unseat a president. I find it kind of hard to grasp being upset about the price of gasoline. If you can't get upset about 900,000 Americans being dead, then I find that, kind of ludicrous to be upset about the price of gas. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Pentti, when you hear things, and it's still going on today, the dialogue of defunding the police. I mean, so far they've done certain things. I mean, I think it could have been Minneapolis, it could have been Seattle, but where hundreds of police officers retired, and now the city's under siege. It's just crazy. And you're not replacing these police officers.
From what I've heard through numerous sources, numerous personnel that I know in different organizations, when you would open up a job position, maybe on a local level, you would get maybe 100 applications. You're only getting 6 now, or the numbers are way down. I know even for the state police, our numbers used to be well over 10 or 15,000 when we opened it up. And I don't know the exact number, but it's reduced well anywhere from 50 to 75% of what they're getting. So a lot of the people who would go into law enforcement and a lot who were veterans are not. So usually a veteran, not always perfect, but they usually have a base. And once you go in and they know how to follow orders, usually a little more mature. They can think on their feet. Sometimes they've been under fire. And that's the person that you want out there at 0200 in the morning when somebody's banging on your door, that can figure out what to do and how to make a command decision. So a lot of the personnel like that are not going in or not the best. And people, I wrote recommendations for a couple people. I don't want to go into law enforcement. I want to go into a trade or whatever. And they're going away, and we're losing a lot of that. So I don't know in the next 5, 10, 15, or 20 years what kind of numbers we're going to have in, and if anybody's going to want to serve. And it's very hard, disheartening for the guys that were in Seattle or Portland, which was an absolute abomination on what happened out there. And they were frustrated, and I can't blame them for walking away when nobody backs you and you're out there by yourself, and nobody's getting prosecuted, and it feels like it's you against the world. And there's going to be repercussions for that for years to come until we backfill some of these. And it was the other statistic out that if the United States was invaded, 40 or 50% of the people wouldn't fight like the Ukrainians are fighting. Every Ukrainian male just about is over there fighting, and they said most people wouldn't fight. So that just goes to show you.
Absolutely. When I look at where the country's gone, it's so disheartening because I just can't figure out, because they never want to bring spiritual things into it. It's always a separation of church and state. So how do you turn it around? How do you change the culture of a people who have, since they've gotten the right to vote, had voted against their own best interest? You just don't think that the leaders of that party want these people to be educated, because you can't uh, you can't keep going in this direction without having complete anarchy. The only thing that separates us from a country like Venezuela is law enforcement. Let's face it. If we don't watch out, it's going to be the lunatics running the insane asylum.
Yes.
You know, it really is. One of the things I learned when I looked at January 6th and the storming of the Capitol building, and I don't agree with the destruction of property, but I've learned one thing: the police that were outside let them in. You know.
Oh, there's a whole inside on that.
You know,
that the
there was a
public will
big
never know.
effort to get into it, but I think you have to have all of law enforcement and all of military on your side if you want to change the government. You can't go in there like that. That was just a crazy thing, and I was saddened to see. And then he blamed Trump, of course. You know,
Never once did he ever say violence. Never once. He just said, you have a right to protest, protest. How is it that all these cities were being destroyed, lit on fire, and nobody said a word? They assembled, and what happened is they injected a certain element of people in there, and that's why you have what you have. But the majority of those people were peaceful people. You know, and how is it that there's people that were killed and all these, the looting and the burning of the cities, nobody really went to jail, yet they're taking these people that they apprehended and they're still sitting in jail to this very day. One guy just recently committed suicide. He said, I'm done. He goes, because there was no one. Those are the types of things, and there's a whole undercurrent that's running through the Trump occult, the deep state. There really is. You get your George Soroses of the world. You get all these people that are just undermining everything because they want nothing more than for the United States of America to become a socialist company. Because then you go to Marxism, socialism, communism, and they start with the church. They go into the family. They want the families to be disrupted. They don't want fathers. They don't want mothers. They don't want leadership in the family. And they start brainwashing these kids. And now we're looking at a situation where they're saying, hey, you should be able to choose your gender at 5, 6, 7 years old. It's like, really?
yeah, you know, I actually ran for school board a few years ago to try and make a difference. I didn't make it, and as it turned out, blessed by not being there because I really don't have the time that's necessary to commit to it. But thankfully, in Egg Harbor Township, our school board has changed, and hopefully, when you see, you know, for Governor Murphy to come out recently and say that the Department of Education are going to get together and take a look at, he's admitting that we're right, that they were ready to teach our K through 5th graders worse than just sex education. I mean, it's ridiculous. But let me ask two military veterans. How do you feel about them letting transgenders in the military? Do you have an opinion on it?
No, it's, I have an opinion, but I will not. I'll keep it to myself.
You know,
I'll say I'm going to approach this biblically. Okay, there's, it's a tough situation in our climate, but somebody at some point you got to draw a line, and I just think that it's gonna end up having a bad result, and when you get into what God made and God's, and what God stated versus what's actually happening, it's very disturbing, and I'm not, one thing that Jesus said is, he said, you can hate the sin, but you need to love the sinner. So I'm going to leave it at that. I see everybody as a soul that potentially can make it to heaven. So I'm going to pray for those people. All the other stuff that's going on around that's just it's just not happening.
Yeah, it really bothered me in Egg Harbor Township in the school system when they first started letting people who, to me, if you go through the operations and transform your sex, I can live with that. I can't. I don't agree. I don't think God makes mistakes.
Right.
But hey, listen. You want to. If you're a woman, you want to become a man, and you go through all that it takes to do that. I have nothing to say about that. But in high school, and I had twin daughters there at the time. All you had to do was go to the principal's office and say, "Well, I identify as a woman." Well, let me tell you something. When I was in high school, I would have had no problem hanging out in the girls' room.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's been episodes across this country, people don't want to admit it, where young girls are raped in the locker rooms and in the bathrooms by men who are not transgenders.
Yeah.
So you can't even. I don't even think you're allowed to transition till you're over 18 and over. So in high school, it shouldn't even be a problem. Bill, you participated when you were at the Citadel in track and field. What do you think about what's happened in women's sports where they're letting male?
Yeah, that's a tough situation in that, first of all, everybody knows about the UPenn swimmer. When you see him, you see that person standing next to the competitors, which are all female. It's a physiological difference looking at them. And so I agree that males should be in male sports, females should be in female sports. And if you're going to go in as a male and get into female sport, what advantage is that? You're going to have an asterisk next to your name forever. Why even do that? It's just, so to me, there's a reason why there's male sports and there's female sports. And and the statistics behind all of the transgender and the moving from male to female, or female to male, you look at the statistics, it's horrible. It's a horrible ending. They don't end up being totally happy with what they did, and that all goes back to faith in the Lord. It's just like this country was based on God, was based on God's word. And we're doing everything but look at God's word. So, once again, when you don't look to the Lord and you don't look to God's word, the outcome is not going to be favorable. And this is what you're getting.
Right. Well, that's, when they decided the separation of church and state, it kind of guided us, our country, into this into where we're at today. And I don't say, I think that most people join the military that are that want to transition. I think they just join to get the military to pay for it. That's what my own feeling is, and that's what bothers me about it. If they're already transitioned, they want to join the military. I can't. I've talked to guys that are Marines and Army. They don't care about the person next to them being anything but their buddy, and being able to share that foxhole and know that they'll be there for them. So most of the combat veterans that I've talked to really couldn't care less about the issues, just about the attitude, and I get that. If anybody'd like to give us a call, 609-798-4475, 609-798-4475. You're welcome to call, talk to Pentti, talk to Bill, have a question. Before I get back to our guest, there's a couple things I want to run by our audience. I've got a couple notes here. My cousin Kathy McFadden, she works with Atlantic Prevention Resources, and It's a organization that helps our young men and women that come home from Iraq, Afghanistan, and they have a seminar going on. It's called Achieving Personal Balance. It's designed especially for men and women associated with the military. Participants will develop and increase healthy coping skills that will help provide a healthy balance in their lives. The group meets for 8 weeks, once per week for 90 minutes. It's virtual via Zoom, and it begins Tuesday, April 26th. And the sessions run 4 p.m. to 5:30. If you want some information, you're welcome to call 609-287-6780. Amanda Hartman is the individual running that. So, and as I give out this information, please, if you miss a phone number, you miss an email, or just a piece of information that's important to you, feel free to reach out to me at IRSKILL. It's IRSKILL at AOL.com, and I'd be glad to get you whatever information you need. On Wednesday, May 11th, Randazzo's Pizzeria and Family Restaurant is welcoming the spring fundraiser for the South Jersey Quilts of Valor. For those of you who didn't get a chance to listen to our show last week, United States Navy veteran Diana Easterday, who's also part of South Jersey Quilts of Valor, was on and spoke about it. They're having this fundraiser Wednesday, May 11th, 4 until 9 p.m., and that's at 34th Street and Asbury Avenue in Ocean City. You can eat in the restaurant, you order takeout or delivery, and Randazzo's will donate 15% of the proceeds to South Jersey Quilts of Valor. So, from what I hear, gift certificates are also included in the fundraiser, so consider purchasing them also. Very important, Atlantic City Regional Stand Down, serving homeless and at-risk veterans in Atlantic City, Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. That's at 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Being held at the All Wars Memorial Building. It's the old soldiers' home at 1510 Adriatic Avenue in Atlantic City. The services include VA medical, mental health, benefits, claims, housings, employment. There will be men's and women's clothing and products, and lunch included. If you need to contact Pat Tatum of the American Legion, 609-703-2467, or Bob Luby at 908-894-0746. There's these regional stand-downs take place Cherry Hill, up in Toms River, and across the state. Very important to serve our homeless and at-risk veterans. And as I say every week, I do these in date order, not in order of importance, because this next one is the most important announcement. My fellow riders, American Legion riders from Post 352, will be having the 12th Annual Veterans Benefit Pig Roast and Chicken Barbecue. That's Sunday, May 15th, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. The donation is $20 per person at the door, or just about any Legion rider has tickets to sell if you know one. But we'd love to have you come out. It's a barbecue, North Carolina pork and chicken platter with all the fixings. Includes free draft beer or soft drinks. There's mixed drinks available at the cash bar inside. Hot dogs and hamburgers for the kids. It's eat in or take out, rain or shine. If we know there's rain in the forecast, we'll have a big tent up outside. And live music will be by the Motts Creek Pickers. We also have a great Chinese auction, 50-50, and all kinds of door prizes. Come on out. Not only do you get a great event and, of good food and entertainment, but you get to rub shoulders with the men and women who've given you every freedom and liberty that you enjoy. That's May 15th, 1 to 5 p.m., and I'm going to announce this like I do every week, because I know I'll end up getting a phone call or text or email. If you have any questions, call Tom Dixon, the president, at 609-839-9568. And this is not a ride. This is not the ride for the vets that we do in the fall. This is just a barbecue at the post. If you are coming from the Camden County area and you want to ride in with Williamstown Post 252, get in touch with Big White Glenn Mullery, who's the president. You can look it up on Facebook or give me a call. I can give you his number to get in touch with him. So if you want to ride in with that group, you're welcome to. There's always space for all the motorcycles around the post. So come on out, have a good time. That's Sunday, May 15th, 1 to 5 p.m. That's the week after Mother's Day. I hope to see you. Every first and third Sunday, the Wilmington VA Outreach Live, hosted by Jackie Hinker and Patrick Carney. Both of them are veteran community outreach specialists for the VA, and a lot of good things that they talk about. If you have questions, you could get in touch with them and talk to them. Pat and Jackie do a great job of servicing our vets here in South Jersey. Wow. I would done those announcements. Please, if you missed something, get in touch with me, irskill@aol.com. And for those who question that email, I am an accountant, so irskill kind of fits perfect. Also, call in 609-798-4475. You have a question or something you want to talk about. And we're back with our guest, Pentti Forsman, a United States Army veteran and also a veteran of our New Jersey State Police, and Bill Blake, who's a United States Air Force veteran. Guys, we've covered a number of subjects, but I'm going to ask each of you. I'll start with Pentti. I kind of asked this question of all of our guests when they're here, mainly because over the years, it started with Veterans Day. We kind of noticed that our school systems weren't really promoting Veterans Day. I remember when I was a kid, we were off for Veterans Day. We were able to, my dad was a decorated World War II veteran. We went to different ceremonies, and we come today to realize that not that much happens in our school system. As a matter of fact, a lot of the school systems don't even let recruiters in to speak to the seniors. One of the things I came to realize when I was running for school board was that not just the curriculum, but the attitude in our high schools is that everybody should be going to college. And we all know that not everybody's college material. So, Penny, if you were to be speaking at a high school commencement exercise with the young men and women whose lives now are in the balance, making decisions, what would you tell them about a career in the military?
I would mention it as well as a trade as well, and college. College is, like you said, isn't for everyone. Look into the military. If you need money to go to college, the GI Bill, learn a trade if you can, something that can relate to when you get out of or off of active duty, that can relate to your civilian field. The country needs truck drivers. In the Army, they were called 88 Mikes. The guys, if you transition off of active duty or as a guardsman or a reservist, and you have that MOS, you definitely can get a job because they're posted all over the place for truck drivers. So I would say it's an option. If you don't like it, you could do your enlistment and then go. You could always delay going to college or to a trade school, but you can go in and serve. It should be an option that's on the table. The one thing I would say is my daughter's school, back when she went to Folsom, they did a phenomenal job for Veterans Day. I was invited every year, as well as all the veterans, whether they were mothers, fathers, uncles, grandfathers of the kids, and they would have a breakfast for us. We got to sit up on stage. We got a little flag. They did a whole ceremony. They asked for pictures of your service, so they did a whole slideshow. Whoever served, they were from Vietnam veterans. We all got to talk beforehand, and the pictures went. And the kids, they asked some questions. I brought in a steel pot, the Kevlar helmet. They got to hold it and see how heavy it was. I had a ballistic vest, and the kids really got to enjoy that and see. And that school, that was just my personal experience, really went above and beyond. So I'd like to give them kudos for doing that, as well as some of the teachers. Their fathers or grandfathers had served, so there was a connection there. And it's unfortunate to hear that some schools do not honor it or do not let recruiters in or anything else. So, but my experience, and that was really a great day, and I look forward to doing that every year. That really was a pleasure to take part in.
That's great to hear, because Mainland, for years, Pat Carney's mom, Joe Carney, had a veterans breakfast there. They did the same type of thing, and it was great to see that. Bill, career Air Force veteran, you did end up going to the Citadel. What would you say?
I kind of agree with Pentti in that, college isn't for everybody. And my personal view on college nowadays, it's just kind of an indoctrination. It's more of a political thing than anything else. Some of your most prestigious universities just recently had you had an atheist and a Christian, and they were going to have just a healthy debate, and they stormed the students stormed it, and just just desecrated it. And then it was only that after, I think that this is the same related story, the judges, because they were all pre-law or law or whatever, the judges said, well, we don't want you guys working. Now all of a sudden they're quiet as can be. They're not saying anything. But I do think that if I were to do it all over again, if I was in today's day and age, I would definitely become an electrician or something of that nature. And then I would really, I love the military, but I think the National Guard, whether it's Army or Air National Guard, is a great place. It opens up a lot of doors. There's a lot of maturity that has to take place from the age of 18 to say 21, 22, so that has a big, huge effect. And then I just think that a lot of these college graduates are graduating, they're not even having jobs to go to, so there they are with nothing. You have a trade, and I know many people that went to college, and I know many people that. Now, as for the Veterans Day, I will say my personal experience with my daughters throughout the Northfield School and now in the mainland, I remember them doing, it was almost mandatory, they had to do a profile of a family member that was either retired from the military or was in the military or whatever, and then I mean, just as I do, every Veterans Day, I know right there in front of Northfield Police, they have a parade. So I don't think, and that's in Brigantine's the same. I don't think they're letting that subside as much as some other areas in the United States. But I still think that the military, a lot of people deep down inside love the military and non-military because they have family members that have served, passed away, died in battle, and so forth. And so I just think that it depends on what the geographic or the geopolitical situation is in the area of the United States.
Do you guys believe that everybody should serve 2 years in the military?
Yes, I do. A lot of Western European countries, Israel does it, and if you don't believe in the military, then we'll put you in the Peace Corps, and you can go serve. In some third world country, you can serve food on a food line and really see how people live. It was funny you brought up earlier, mentioned socialism, and Bill had mentioned college indoctrination. I did my 4 years of active duty. I immediately went to the reserves. When I transitioned off of active duty, I got the GI Bill, and I went to our local school here, Stockton. So I was a political science major. So I took all political science classes. So you had the whole gamut in there. And some people you knew who were going to be lawyers and have went on and had very successful careers. With that being said, we would have debates. And I was fortunate enough that the Army took me to, well, some people wouldn't say not fortunate, but the experience you can't put a price tag on, that I was in East Berlin twice. In East Germany, Berlin was 110 miles inside East Germany. A lot of people don't know that. They thought it was actually on the border. So you cross over Checkpoint Alpha, where you actually leave West Germany as you went into East Germany. And it was called the American Duty Train. And as the train went through into East Germany, the two American MPs got off of the train. And I'll tell you what, I had a sense of pride. They went along the train, and there was covers that were on the American flag, and they took the covers off. So it was almost like it was a moving embassy through East Germany. At that point, two Soviet MPs got on the train, and they sat directly across at attention from the two American MPs. They did not say anything, and they were there under the guise of safe travel through East Germany. And we got to Checkpoint Bravo, which is when we got to Berlin. The Soviet MPs got off. The duty train pulled into Berlin, into the train station, at which time we unloaded. And then when we were in uniform, we were able, part of our training, we trained with the Berlin Brigade, we went through Checkpoint Charlie into the east. So I got to see firsthand socialism that everybody talks about today, and what the cars looked like, what you could buy in the stores, what the clothing looked like. Everything was very drab, gray. People yearned for freedom. And when we were over there in uniform, they were looking at us, and this is before the wall came down, and you could just see the people that they wanted what we had. And somewhere along the line, we want what they had. And it's on top of that, I had traveled before I went in the military, and I spent several days in the Soviet Union, in St. Petersburg. It was Leningrad when I was there. So I got to see them add up a total when I was in a bread line for 45 minutes waiting to buy a couple biscuits, and they added my total up on an abacus machine. I saw firsthand. So when I went to Stockton and I was in these political science classes and socialism, and it sounds good on paper. Marx and Engels, they tried. On paper, it's the best thing since sliced bread, but it doesn't work because there's corruption in there all the way through. It's even worse than when somebody's corrupt here, because what's good for me is not good for you. And you could see that with Putin and his oligarchs and the whole 9 yards. So when I was in the debates with these individuals in my class, and I was a little older, the military bills, etc., I grew up between 18 and 22. I went in the Army as a boy. I think I came out a man. That's what my mom said. So I'm 23, 24 years old, debating kids that maybe hadn't left Atlantic or Ocean County, or maybe Philly was their farthest trip that they ever went on. So when I asked them, have you ever been in a socialist country? None of them raised their hand. I said, well, I was in East Germany twice, in the Soviet Union once. And I said, what you propose doesn't work. I said, it's in theory, you're thinking of utopia. And that experience from the military and my travels helped me in the debate. And that's why, to this day, most of these people, I haven't lost a debate yet because they haven't been there and they haven't seen it firsthand. Talk to some Cuban Americans that came from Cuba. They can't. They love this country. They're some of our most patriotic people in the military. The guys were phenomenal soldiers running around because they lived under the regime, or their parents did, and they escaped it. And it was really able to relate a real life experience as to opposed to what reading in a book. And to this day, that helped me. And I attest that to my Army time, and wearing that uniform over in a communist country. Really was, it was something internal, that it was a good feeling, and that you represented something, and you could look into people's eyes, and they wanted what we had.
You mentioned St. Petersburg, and one thing nobody knows much about this part of me is, they see my name, Merlino, and they don't know that my maternal grandparents were Russian Jews. My mom raised us in Judaism and Catholicism, and my grandparents, their parents, and the rest of their family were all slain in the streets of St. Petersburg during the pogroms there. As soon as not too many people mention St. Petersburg.
I was very fortunate to this day to have
What
spent a
did you-
couple days.
What did you think when the wall came down?
I was actually home. I was in Berlin my second time around April or May of '89, and I think it came down in November, so about 6-7 months beforehand. And it was amazing. I watched it. I was transfixed to the television just watching it, because being there just 6 or 7 months before, I didn't see that coming. But once again, when I was on that other side of the wall, you could see in the people's eyes they didn't talk to you because they were scared of the East German secret police, the Stasi, and what would happen to them. So, but it was really an amazing feeling. And then all the other countries, and it just went like dominoes. And it really, you felt like you did something. All the ones that have served with me and well before me, and ones that have sacrificed a lot more, that we outlasted them. We won. That freedom triumphed, and the people, the tens of millions of people behind the Iron Curtain, got to have that freedom, and that's why the Ukrainians are fighting tooth and nail today, because they've had 30 years of freedom, and everyone 30 and under never lived under Russian Soviet rule, and the parents and grandparents are telling them, you don't want it, and so they're going to fight to the death, because there's no alternative. There's not life being part of the Russian and Soviet Empire.
Unbelievable. Bill, when you do you believe that everybody should serve in the military?
Absolutely. In one way, shape, or form. You look at Israel. Israel probably has, first of all, their Air Force is the best in the world. They take an F-16 and they perform about 500 to 600 modifications after it's combat ready, from what we call combat ready. They're fighting a war every day. They got Iran ready to just fire on them as soon as they get all the, I guess it's the uranium or whatever necessary to build a warhead. So that's an example there, and I think that there's that period from 18 to 22 years old. It's statistically proven that you're kind of in that, I don't know what I want to do. I want to do something. And, then you throw in the whole 100-year plan of the indoctrination of you look at history, how communism entered into Russia. They first started by taking down the church. They diluted the church. Back then, you went to the church to get married. You went to the church to get divorced. You went to the church for everything. And then when they took that out of the game, that loosened up everything, and then it just eroded. And same thing over in Cuba. And then so when you go to Florida and you start talking about this whole socialist nonsense, they go in an uproar down there. And that's why Florida is doing so well with their values, because that little Havana down there, those people either came over in boats and rafts, and those that didn't make it died because they took the chance. But they're there, and their ancestors came over from Cuba, so they're, this doesn't work. So indoctrinating and all that other stuff doesn't work. But the military stint is probably a plus. And a good point Pentti made was, if you don't want to go in and be in a combat bearing arms, whatever, then go into the Peace Corps, go into the Hacksaw Ridge, go do something like that.
We're going to play this song, and then we're going to come back for the home stretch.
I hear people say we don't need this war, but I say there's some things worth fighting for. What about our freedom and this piece of ground? We didn't get to keep 'em by backing down. They say we don't realize the mess we're getting in. Before you start your preaching, let me ask you this, my friend. Have you forgotten took all the footage off my TV. Said it's too disturbing for you and me. It'll just breed anger, that's what the experts say. If it was up to me, I'd show it every day. Some say this country's just out looking for a fight. Well, after 9/11, man, I'd have to say that's right. Have you forgotten how it felt that day? See your homeland under fire and her people blown away. Have you forgotten when those towers fell? We had neighbors still inside, going through a living hell. And we vowed to get the ones behind Bin Laden. Have you forgotten? I've been there with the soldiers who've gone away to war. You can bet that they remember just what they're fighting for. Have you forgotten all the people killed? Yes, some went down like heroes in that Pennsylvania field. Have you forgotten about our Pentagon? All the loved ones that we lost and those left to carry on. Don't you tell me not to worry about Bin Laden. Have you forgotten? Have you forgotten? Have you forgotten?
Welcome back to Veterans Matter Radio Show. My guests, Bill Blake, 31-year United States Air Force veteran, and Pentti Forsman, a 23-year United States Army veteran and a veteran of the New Jersey State Police. We're talking a number of things, not just military, but some social things. And it's really quite interesting to get you. I got a text here, another great text, from Jack from Ventnor, wanted me to ask Bill. I guess the song might have triggered it. That was Have You Forgotten by Darryl Worley, which is a tribute to 9/11. He wants to know if you believe today, if we were under attack, if an airliner shut off whatever it is that they shut down, would our F-16s be able to stop an attack like happened in New York?
I think as a result of 9/11, complacency is what set up 9/11. You know, when the terrorists said, "I don't want to learn how to take off and land. I just want to learn how to fly." And oh, by the way, put up New York and put up Washington, and you know, I think there's a lot more measures. Our CIA and the FBI and all these. That's where I will give them credit. Is they've got a lot of countermeasures and a lot of detection that's set up for that, to where they see it coming a mile away. Not to mention that out here at the 177th, I think it's about, from the time they scramble and they take off, it's 9 to 12 or 15 minutes. Don't mark that, could be classified or not, but that's how fast they can be there to intercept. And then obviously once these aircraft do something erratic and so forth, that also triggers a lot of things. So their transponder code is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So and now you have in those aircraft, they have locking doors. They even actually have designated, trained, certified pilots that carry 9mm weapons or whatever they have to carry. And I believe that you also have your air marshals that are on these board. They board these aircraft if they look at the data and all that. So there's so many layers of proactive versus reactive protection that sets it up to where it's not going to happen versus if it's going to happen. So, now granted, with the border and all that wide open, you don't know what's going to come through there. So, those poor guys down there that are in uniform working that ice or whatever, they're just overwhelmed. But I would say that it's proven that there was a book called The Day of the Jackal. It was about Ramsey Youssef. He's the one that actually went after the trade centers first in like 19 whatever. And what actually did him in was not anybody in uniform. It was a person in a neighborhood that saw something that didn't look right. Matter of fact, the car that he had with the bomb in it came through Brick Township and was actually pulled over. They never searched it, but that bomb ended up going into the van, which, So I think that the everyday citizen today, when they don't have their ear pods in and they're not looking out on their phones, to get massacred that way, when they're alert, I think that's what the deterrence is. The average person says, hey, you know what, that doesn't look right. Let's call it in and let's see it. So as far as aircraft, I highly doubt that would ever happen again, just based on what we learned from that and how we have countermeasures.
I lost my train of thought there. You had me so intrigued in that. When you look at September 11th and that these, here's what I was thinking of. I was told this by a very good source in law enforcement, that today they're flying people over the border, and the State Department is giving, so far the numbers like 25 million people have been given Social Security cards. Then they're flown, our DMVs are being flooded with illegals that they go in, they get driver's license, now they have a driver's license and a Social Security card. Next, welfare, food stamps, WIC, probably a cell phone, and who knows what else. But 25 million so far have hit our DMVs here in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extraordinary number. And 25 million Democratic votes,
Well, that's what nobody wants to say it. They think it's a curse to just call out the truth. The whole reason why is it that they're coming in from the south there, but yet when the Cubans wanted to come in, because Cubans are pretty much Republican at heart.
Conservative.
They really are. They're conservative.
Sure.
So the Cubans wanted to come, but they said no. Anybody coming in from Canada, no. But yet you can flood in through those borders, because that's for the number one reason is because of the votes. And now you've got that title. They're going to recall that title where it definitely opens it. Yeah. It's absolutely crazy. But what I think is going to happen is the tide is going to turn on that. I really do. I think the Hispanics, and they're going to realize when they get here that they want to be here for the freedom of it all, and I think that is going to influence the vote. That's but the other underlying problem is the voting system and things of that nature. So that has to be under control as well, because you could have somebody like Trump come in again, and the whole world saying we want him, and all of a sudden, nope, he lost, and it's all because somebody hit a switch.
Yeah, you just get this bad feeling that sometime in August there's going to be a worse strain of the virus, and we're going to have vote by mail then.
I don't think you're going to get. I truthfully think that Americans, especially you look at the political parties, the traditional Democrats, it's now affected them. When it starts affecting everybody's wallet and the cost of gas, I mean, you shut down the Keystone Pipeline from day one, and now they're saying, well, it's because it would have never been operational. No, it would have been just about the right timing. So I just think a lot of this stuff was just done in spite. If both sides could just get together in the aisle and say what's good for the people, and you got to use the power of the vote too. I mean, it starts with these school boards. That's the reason why Virginia and all this stuff's being overturned in Texas is because I think COVID was a blessing for parents in one aspect. It opened their eyes up. Now they're all of a sudden see what their kids are looking at every day and see what's going on. And I think that's had a tremendous positive impact. And I think parents, you start messing around with mom and dad's kids, they're not going to have it. So I think there's a lot of other things. Plus, God can do whatever He wants to do. He can turn the tide on a dime, and He's done it, and He will do it. So just when you think that it's over with, God will come in and intervene. He'll do what He needs to do.
It's a nice thought, and I believe in the sovereignty of our Lord, but Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, the Roman Empire was destroyed, the Greek Empire was destroyed, the Babylons were destroyed. I think God reaches a point where He doesn't, He's had enough. And I'm hoping that I hear the trumpet sound before that time comes.
Well, that's a great point that you made, because if you look at the book of Daniel in the 70 weeks, these prophecies have all been 100% accurate. So God said, I'm going to bring my people back, 1949, and the last generation will see, not that, they were saying, well, pestilences and all these other things, they were all happening, but they're all happening at once. And the big factor that tells us that we are nearing there is for the world to see from to and fro, for everything to be seen at once. And that's the first time ever in the history of this world you have the internet. So they're going to have, you're going to have the rapture, and then you're going to have the 7 years. The peace treaty gets broken in 3.5 years. The two witnesses, which they say could be Elijah and Enoch, or Elijah and Moses. Then the 140th. All those things. So as much as we see in America that we're in a decline, throughout the world, in Iran, in Russia, and China, there's a huge revival. There are more Christians being saved under those really bad adverse circumstances. So you are right, though. Roman Empire's fallen, and yeah, I get it.
Mike, you had mentioned voting before. When I was on active duty, I had some people from my district that took care of me, so they made sure when I was overseas that I always got my absentee ballot to mail. Because I was still a resident of New Jersey and of where I lived at the time. So they really did a phenomenal job in sending me that so I can participate, because some of the local elections, sometimes 1 or 2 votes depends on who gets in. It actually comes down sometimes to the wire. With that being said, a lot of my unit had a voting officer, but it was kind of disheartening that a lot of other members from different states and every territory, a lot of service members, in my personal experience, and I lived with multiple guys from different states, they didn't vote while they served. So I would say yet the people that are serving, you really need to make sure that you vote, because you have a vested interest in the course of history and who gets elected and some of your leaders. And I hate when people say, well, my vote doesn't count. No, it does count, because a lot of people throughout the world don't have a chance to do it. Right. So that's a right, and I take that very seriously, and I try to instill that in others. Make sure you go. I said, then you can't complain. If you didn't participate, it's very hard to complain when you need to participate in the process. Whether you believe it or don't believe it, I said, as long as you participate, then you have some skin in the game. But the military, I know they did it, public announcements, or the public information officers along with the voting officers, to try to make sure that the members serving overseas vote. But I know in some of my units, a lot really didn't, and that was kind of disheartening. I was trying to talk some people into it, but I just had people who were involved in the political process here that really made sure I got that ballot. I used to sit at my desk and I used to send that in, and they send it to me weeks before, so it would get back here in time.
In the last election, the last presidential election, there was, they found a truckload of military boats just trashed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is
a shame.
It's disturbing.
So I mean, the consensus is that for the most part, military people are conservative. So it doesn't surprise me that they would resort to these tactics. It's just shameful to me.
Yeah.
My dad was a World War II veteran. I lost an uncle, 2 uncles. My mom's brother and my dad's brother both died. One at the Battle of the Bulge, one in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And it just dishonors all of our men and women who have sacrificed so much for every liberty and freedom, and the right to vote is so important. I agree with you 100%. And we should make sure that our active duty military get an opportunity to do that.
And the actual system itself to which they calculate and compile the votes, that needs to be closely watched, because that Dominion system, I read things on it like that. So everything gets voted and tied, then it goes to Barcelona, and then from there it goes into a black hole and comes back. And you see all these instances, facts, where 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, the vote count drastically changes. It's still under investigation to this day. But once again, you have to expose it to fix it. And I think that I think Republicans are pretty passive, and they need to be more aggressive, not in a violent way, but they need to be more aggressive. And you see a lot of these people showing up to these voting stations. Well, you need to have both sides there to make sure that the game is fair.
Yeah, vote by mail is just so many opportunities for fraud. But
For the reason.
I'm not going to sit here and say that Trump lost because of illegal voting or anything like that. Trump gave them all the warning way back in August before the election. He let Pence know that the Biden candidacy, they had already filed 60 lawsuits in the battleground states. Out of 66 that were filed around this country, 60 of them to change election laws. And that's what did it. They changed the laws. I can remember going to sleep that night at midnight. I thought he had it in the bag. I couldn't believe it the next morning but I think Trump knew it. I think Trump's biggest mistake personally was that he didn't get rid of Pence at the midterms. I would have loved to seen him put Ivanka as his vice president. We never would be in the position we're in today, because and January 6th never would have happened.
So the 2016 election, people don't realize this. That's when they first tried this whole voting system, and it backfired. That's why Hillary went to bed thinking she won this thing, and woke up and knows you didn't win it, and Trump won it. So I think that you're right. I think that there's a lot of things that President Trump could have done better, but coulda, woulda, shoulda. If he gets back in, or personally, if we have somebody other than him in this, that could be a factor as well, like Ron DeSantis or somebody like that.
One thing you can be assured of, besides Trump, there will never, ever be another non-politician run for office.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
They just never. I can't think of another American that would be able to take what he took.
Well, every day.
It's just, and then you lose so much. I just don't believe it will ever happen again. And it's sad, because I'm not saying that Donald Trump's the greatest human being that ever walked the earth.
Right.
Being an accountant here in South Jersey, I suffered because of some of the things that happened while he was running casinos. I actually had a couple businesses go bankrupt. But one of the things I can also say is that whatever he did it with the law behind him. You can file bankruptcy, which he did, but he did it with conservatorship. He ended up, if you could wait it out and get paid monthly through a trustee, you survived. Little companies got hurt, and people kind of misunderstand his place here in Atlantic City. But one thing for sure, it was the boxing capital of the world while he was here.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
But let's see, guys, we got a few minutes left. I'll give you the last word. You want to say something to our listening audience? Maybe something positive about America and what it's meant to you to serve as you have.
Yes, we're fortunate that we live in the greatest country on the face of the earth. We have our issues. We're not perfect, but let me tell you something. I've seen it on the other side personally, and the socialism, it sounds good on paper, looks good on books, sounds good in theory, but in practicality it does not work. And your service to defend the country is well appreciated. Look out for your buddy. Unfortunately, when we get off of active duty or when we go away from our guard or reserve units, you're in the community. If you need help, reach out, check on your battle buddy. We used to check on him when we were on active duty all the time. Check on that guy that lives in the middle of nowhere. Reach out to him, send him a text, give him a call, make sure they're doing okay. People that you served with. Really look out after them, because once you leave active duty, you're away from that base. You're away from all the VA help, whether it's mental, physical, whatever it is, and you go back to your community, and that person can't talk to anybody. So reach out to them and make sure that they still have a vested interest in, the military, that somebody cares for them, and that might just be the one thing why they pick up a phone and make a phone call or take a drive and go get either help for their physical well-being or mental well-being. So look out for each other. It doesn't end. We have to take that, through our whole lives. Thank you, Pentti. Bill?
Yeah, the same. We're just samples of many veterans and that have we've kind of been there and done that. So if there's anything else, somebody listened to this today and said, you know what, that helped me make my mind up as to what I want to do. Definitely do that. And I'm always going to put my Christian hat on. Pray, stay in the Word, because you'll get your answers that way. And the last thing, Carly's going to be Lux Salon Tropicana AC, the best salon in Atlantic City. Has won the award 3 years in a row. Go see Carly Blake. She owns that salon, and it is top notch.
Yeah, right. One thing I want to say, Bill, is that we don't usually get to discuss too much biblical and prophecy here on this show, and I really thank you for bringing it up and talking about it. Both of you did a great job, and I want to thank you for taking time to be here instead of being with your family, your friends, and I want to invite you back. If you ever have something going on, you want to come on and talk about it, you're welcome. Anybody out there you didn't get a chance to see this show, you could go to veteransmatternj.com and view it at any time. As of now, I don't know exactly who my guests are going to be next Saturday, but you can be assured we'll be here. And I want to thank our listening audience. And as we say every week, as my co-host Bill Butler used to say, if you love your freedom, thank a vet.
Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street light people. Don't stop believing. Hold on. Street light people.
can't handle the truth.